Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It's Miles here, and today we're going to be talking about the Paladin talent trees, the Protection Paladin talent trees specifically. And obviously this is a sort of second to the video that I posted yesterday, which was talking about Brewmaster trees. If you haven't watched it already, make sure you go and watch it. If you've got any questions about anything that happens in this video or my last video, I'm going to be streaming on Twitch and YouTube right after this video goes live, and also for the next few days, so make sure you tune into those. I'll be there to answer any questions. But let's talk about Protection Paladin. Let's not waste any more time. So Protection Paladin throughout Shadowlands was in a really good spot. It was super strong for the first couple tiers. Not insanely strong in Castle Nathria, but definitely for Sanctum of Domination it was one of the most powerful tanking specs. Mainly due to the amount of damage that it could really dish out when you spec for the most amount of damage, but also because of the healing capabilities. Something that Paladin has, Paladin tank specifically, Prop Paladin, has that other tanks just don't have, is the capability to heal allies to a really good degree. So what I mean by that is Paladin can really help keep your raid alive alongside your healers. So if you ever need that extra bit of healing, however you don't want to take a whole extra healer, a Paladin's like the perfect option. And looking at these talent trees, obviously with the loss of Ashen, it really damages that quite a lot, but overall it stayed kind of decent. And first, obviously, I'm going to be talking about the single target sort of raid prog-esque build that you might want to go with a few other options, and then after that I'll talk about M+, but let's just go into it now. So obviously we start off with Lay on Hands, and we'll go straight into Hammer of Wrath. Very vital one to get. That's pretty obvious. Don't feel like I really need to say much about that. Divine Steed, only bit of movement. Yeah, like all of your options here aren't really going to help you at all. Like these are just kind of, you take them. Most of the time you're going to be taking Diva Aura, but we're going to take Vengeance Aura just so we can get Retribution Aura specifically. This is mainly if you already have like a Paladin healer and you want to go Wings when people die during prog, which is really good, obviously. You don't always have to go this, but if you don't have another Paladin, you kind of have to go that anyway, and you are able to skip over this and take other things. But obviously that just purely depends on what your comp's looking like. Now let's talk about Divine Steed. So we have two options here. We can either increase the duration of Divine Steed, or give it the Seal of the Templar. I'm not really going to bother reading that out because it's obviously really janky. What it basically means is while you're on your steed, you have increased range on some of your abilities. Useless. The 1 second extra is okay. However, we're going to go for the 2 charges. A big reason being that we're going to force out those 2 charges is because 2 charges is better than extra time. And let me quickly explain. So this expansion we've had, obviously the conduit that gives us increased time on the charger. However, I will tell you right now that having 2 charges on the charger is so much more valuable, because you don't always need those extra seconds on your horse. You don't always need them. Like sometimes you've had it where you've only had to go a short distance, or you've only had to go, you know, like whatever. Either way, you don't have to go that far. And honestly, if you position correctly, 99% of the time you're not going to need, or not 99%, 95% of the time you don't need the extra movement speed from the charger. You really never really do. So having 2 charges means that you can do movement within 2 quick successions. So let's say you have movement and then 15 seconds later you have to do another bit of movement. Having 2 charges for that is incredibly useful, obviously, and it really sets you up for some of those better mechanics that you have to deal with. So the 2 charges is always going to be better in this scenario. You can also go for the extra second. It's completely fine to do that as well. However, I'm personally going to go and move down a little bit like this. Now, you have a choice here. If you need something like Blinding Light, absolutely go Blinding Light, because this is really good for like the sort of mass interrupts. If the fight that you're doing right now needs those sort of mass interrupts or needs that AoE CC. Really good example is the Anduin fight. With the Mythic ads, that would constantly be casting. If you use a Blinding Light on that, that was a really good way to interrupt them without going on like stun DRs and without interrupting with a lot of the other classes' AoE CCs. However, if that's not needed for the fight, which is quite often, you won't need that for the fight, you can go Blessing of Freedom, which is also an incredibly good option, and is almost needed for some fights. However, if you don't need either of those, so you don't need any of that sort of utility, a good option is to go into the extra second on Divine Steed. Just quickly talk about this one as well, though, because I kind of just jumped over it without saying anything. Greater Judgment. Judgment causes the target to take 25% increased damage from your next holy power ability. Very standard. I feel like that's just like, there's extra damage. That's all it is. Like, there's nothing more to it. Interrupt. Obviously, I spoke about it in my last video. If you don't need the interrupt, you you could hypothetically skip over it, but I wouldn't really recommend it. You're going to need it for the majority of like fights anyway. There's going to be some sort of level of interrupting, so I'm just going to put it in there regardless. And obviously your holy power spending abilities deal 10% increased damage, which will stack onto the 25% from Greater Judgment, meaning that we're actually getting a decent amount of extra damage on Shield of Righteousness there. Also going to quickly put up Avenging Wrath. Very obvious why we're taking Avenging Wrath. Very important ability to have. And actually, one big change that's happened to Prot Paladin is your Avenger's Shield no longer grants you a holy power. That is arguably the worst change that they've made. The reasoning behind it, they made this in a blue post. Blizzard don't want people to feel like Shield of the Righteousness is a necessity, and instead want to make Shield of the Righteousness feel more like a defensive buff. Basically just trying to make it so your uptime on the Shield of the Righteousness might feel more like 60% rather than 100%, just for the reasoning that they want people to feel like they, don't have to keep it up. But the massive problem with that is they've not actually increased how defensive you are outside of Shield of the Righteousness, really. Like, they've done tiny ones, but nothing seriously. So the biggest issue right now is you're still very likely going to be reliant on keeping up Shield of the Righteousness. However, it's going to be very hard to keep up Shield of the Righteousness because Avenger Shield no longer gives you any holy power. And obviously your haste is going to be lower than it was at the end of this patch, so... And you're going to have lost your forset as well, which is also giving you a ton of... Yeah, overall, you're losing a hell of a lot of holy power generation by losing Shield of the Righteousness and the forset, obviously. So not Shield of the Righteousness, sorry, Avenger Shield. So Shield of the Righteousness is going to be very difficult to keep up, but you're probably still going to need to keep it up by the looks of things. So this is the build. That build I'm going to show you is built to keep it up, while also dealing as much damage as you can. So anyway, I'll get back into doing it now. Armor and crit chance increase by 4%. Yeah, armor's really good obviously on Paladin. Yesterday I was talking about armor on Brewmaster. Useless. Getting an increase of armor on Brewmaster is worthless. However, on a Paladin, we're using a plate wearer. We have a lot of armor. It's actually quite a decent benefit. So, it's going to be giving you about 2% DR-ish, and then obviously 4% crit. So we'll take 4% crit for sure. Judgment of Light. Yeah, this is a talent that we taken in basically every single raiding build. Really good for just passive raid-wide healing. Strong. We take it. We like it. Let's go over to the right now real quick. We have a choose option, which is in-can... Oh my god, I'm never going to be able to say that. I'm just going to call it in-can. Each holy power you spend has a 5% chance to cause your consecration to flare up, dealing a small amount of holy damage to 5 nearby enemies standing inside of it, or your spells and abilities have a chance to cause your target to erupt in blinding light, dealing 500 damage or healing an ally for 600. I'm not going to lie, both of these options aren't great. I think in AoE, obviously, in-can would be a really good option. Touch of Light will likely be scaled up. I don't think that's going to be the final numbers, because obviously we're not having a gear scale, so 500 is actually worthless. And also, so this is 3 procs per minute. As it stands, Touch of Light will never, ever, ever be the option here. And we do sort of want to go down this to an extent, because we do want to start moving into this area. Granted, we can do it from the right-hand side anyway. Still, I'm gonna go in-can just because the other option's so worthless unless they scaled it up. If they scaled it up, that might change, because that does seem incredibly wrong right now, but I don't want to take a gamble and say, oh yeah, this one, because it's going to get scaled up, because we don't know it yet. Next up on things you want to take. We're not going to go too much down the left-hand side, so we don't have to worry about taking too many things down here, but we will take, there we go, Blessing of Sacrifice. Blessing of Sacrifice is just incredibly good during prog, to be able to give someone Blessing of Sacrifice. Incredibly needed in some scenarios for some mechanics. Obviously, like the sort of higher end raiding. What's brilliant about Blessing of Sacrifice is the majority of bosses, only one's tank is taking damage at a time. So you can pop sack on the other tank and you don't have to worry about the damage that you're taking, and you can sort of keep the other tank alive and use it as an extra defensive. If used cleverly, Blessing of Sacrifice is just incredibly useful during prog raids. And then you have the choice node here, which I will quickly go into detail. Either reduce the cooldown by 60 seconds, which makes it a 1 minute cooldown, which is good. Sorry. If you need it on a 1 minute cooldown, incredibly powerful. If you don't need it on a 1 minute cooldown, if you're only going to be using it every 2 minutes, or you don't really need it all too much, you can go for the recompense, which is looking like it could be really good in some scenarios, but useless in others, which is after your Blessing of Sacrifice ends, 50% of the total damage diverted to you is added to your next Judgment as bonus damage, or your next Word of Glory as bonus healing. The effects and bonus damage cannot exceed 30% of your maximum health, and its bonus healing cannot exceed 100% of your maximum health. Which is good. Like, you're not always going to get maximum benefit out of this, however, you're still going to get some decent benefit. I would still go ahead and say that this is a good option if you plan on using it a fair bit. If you don't plan on using Blessing of Sacrifice, there's just no benefit to really taking it. However, there's not loads of other things here that I'm going to say, oh yeah, you'd really, really want that. So, personally, I would go into a recompense, just because you can get this extra bit of burst damage as well, which is really nice. And 30% of your health is still good, and obviously a Word of Glory, that basically makes it a lay on hands. Practically makes it a lay on hands if you get the maximum value. Actually more than a lay on hands. So yeah, like, it could be really good, and especially during high damage scenarios, you can get incredibly good value out of that. We've got 2 more points before we open up the last row. Basically everything here is kind of what we wanted. Golden Path, not really good. Like, there's not really much benefit, and then obviously this one, Golden Path again, which isn't ideal. And then we have the Word of Glory echoes onto nearby allies. Yeah, these are okay. If you really need extra healing in your raid, I guess you could go these. I don't think you're ever going to need healing that badly that you go into loads of these. But I'm going to click Blessing of Protection. A big reason as to why I'm clicking Blessing of Protection here is because even though Blessing of Protection won't be used in every single fight, it's still really good, don't get me wrong. It's still really, really useful, especially as a tank. If you're about to die, like, you're guaranteed that you're going to die, you can pop Blessing of Protection to lose aggro. And if it means that you don't die, it's still worth it at the end of the day, you know? Unironically, it means it's still worth it. So, and then obviously we can make a choice node here for improved Blessing of Protection to reduce its cooldown by 60 seconds down from 5 minutes, which is never really going to be used. Or Blessing of Spell Warding, similar story, probably never going to be used, like, unless you really need it for a specific mechanic. But the reason why I'm putting a point into Blessing of Protection here, even though it's a bit more of a situational one, is because Blessing of Freedom and Blinding Light don't have points in them, and you would have been able to, like, and if you need any sort of utility here, I'm using 1 point just because on average you'll probably need to have spent 1 point into one of these 3 for that sort of utility that you need. And then with my last point to unlock the next row, we can put it into either of these 2. I'm probably going to say After Image, just because I think you'd be getting more value than Golden Path. But it depends on the numbers. It really does just completely depend on the numbers. I will click on After Image for now, however this could change to Golden Path if needed, but obviously we're never going to use Seal of Clarity anyway, so it's not really too much of a worry. Next up, Consecration's damage increased by 10%, fine, mainly because we're trying to get to actually it's not even Mad Paragon, it's Zealot's Paragon, Interesting, new name. Obviously, we have Seal of the Crusader here. Your attacks and have a chance to cause your target to take 5% increased holy damage for 5 seconds with an average of 4 procs per minute, meaning that you're going to be having this up about 33% of the time for 5% extra damage, so, well, 10% actually when you fully upgrade it, so that's good. Obviously Zealot's Paragon, which is the exact same as Mad Paragon, except you get less damage on Hammer of Wrath, but it includes Judgment as well. Now, this is really where the entire kit changes. What I mean by that is Hammer of Wrath and the Judgment deal 10% additional damage and extend the duration of your Avenging Wrath. Now, it's by 1 second as well. This could single-handedly make Paladin one of the best tanks. It purely depends on how it plays out and how stats play out, but I think it has a good chance of making Paladin super strong. So to quickly explain, Judgment 10% increased damage and Hammer of Wrath 10% increased damage versus just Hammer of Wrath getting 30% increased damage, you're getting the same amount of damage value just about as the Mad Paragon, except you are getting a lot more Avenging Wrath uptime. Like a lot more Avenging Wrath uptime. Like insane amounts. So a whole 1 second, by the way. A whole 1 second every time that you do it. Mad Paragon is also 1 second, but that's only on Hammer of Wrath. Judgments regenerate all the time. So this is making me think that you could, hypothetically, keep up 100% uptime on Wings, which is also with Sanctified Wrath, which I'll go into in a second, because we will go down there, down that route. And also, I completely forgot. We're not supposed to have a point and after image there. It's supposed to be an Unbreakable Spirit. I do apologize. I thought I'd already put a point into that, but that's just a reduced cooldown on Ardent Defender, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands. So Bubble, Lay on Hands, and Ardent Defender. But the Ardent Defender is the big one. 30% reduced cooldown on Ardent Defender. We take it, so we have to worry about that. That's fine. That's easy. So we'll go into Divine Purpose here. So we have the choice, actually, I'll quickly talk about the choice node. We have Divine Purpose, which is a talent that we took very often. We didn't always take it because Seraphim was also on the same row. So if you wanted the extra damage, you'd go for Seraphim, but this would give you more survivability, which is your Holy Power. Abilities have a 15% chance to make your next Holy Power ability free and 20% more effective. This is really just good, especially for keeping up Shield of the Righteousness. This is really, really, really good. So yeah, it's just standard. Holy Avenger is 3-minute cooldown and your Holy Power generation is tripled for 20 seconds. I've never liked this. I never really have, because it's, 3-minute cooldown. That's not often. You're not often getting this for 20 seconds of practically invincibility to an extent. I say invincibility, not completely invincible, but you're definitely going to struggle to die during that because now Word of Glories and constant uptime and Shield of Righteousness. But the problem that I've got with it is it's not consistent. And I think Paladin struggles the most right now with consistent survivability. Mostly just because we're losing the Holy Power on Avenger Shield, which means that we're not going to have Shield of Righteousness as often. So when we have an option to keep up Shield of Righteousness more consistently versus get 20-second burst windows of being able to easily survive, I'm definitely taking Divine Purpose because, basically a defensive cooldown on a 3-minute cooldown versus consistent defensiveness. I don't know. I think I'm always going to go for the consistency. And I would say Divine Purpose on average is probably going to give you more damage as well. So yeah, overall, Divine Purpose is where it's at for me personally. However, I don't think Holy Avenger is completely out the window. I think it fully depends on the damage profile of the boss and what sort of defensive capabilities that you're going to need. If it's a boss that specifically has these random bursts of 20 seconds where you take insane amount of damage every 3 minutes, then obviously Holy Avenger is going to be the option. But outside of that, I think Divine Purpose will consistently still be the option. Next up, during Avenging Wrath, your mastery is increased by 4%. Since we're going to be keeping up as much uptime as possible, we want that 8% mastery, With that 8% mastery is going to be huge, and since we're keeping up all the time, yeah, just get that going. And then obviously a quick 4% haste increase is also incredibly useful, just in general, because since we're going this Zealot's Paragon, this really heavy wings uptime build, you need as much haste as you can. In this scenario, obviously we're still going to be a haste mastery class, I guarantee it, but you're going to need more haste than anything else, really. Like, your haste is going to be the most important part of your kit. You know, right now, like, you kind of want to go equal haste to mastery-ish, sometimes maybe even more mastery in, like, dungeons and stuff. But you're going to want more haste here, because you need to keep up that Shield of the Righteousness. We're also then going to go Sanctified Wrath as the last one. We have a choice between that and Seraphim. Seraphim, 45-second cooldown, you know, big buff. It's always been used, people like it does a lot of damage, but... I'm sorry, I'm coughing so much, I don't know what it is. But Sanctified Wrath. This is something else. Like, with the build of keeping up wings permanently, you're going to be able to keep up Sanctified Wrath a lot more as well. Hey, what? Hang on. They've changed it? Call upon the light and become an avatar of retribution for 20 seconds. Okay, so that's bugged. Okay, that's definitely not correct, but it's bugged, but I'll explain what it does regardless. I'll quickly talk about it. So it increases the time that you have your wings up by, I believe it's 25% increased time. So what would have normally been 20 seconds, you have 25 seconds instead, and your judgments generate an additional holy power. Which basically means that you're going to be getting that extra holy power generation during wings, while also getting a longer wings uptime. Which, since we're struggling with holy power at the moment, is a lifesaver, an absolute lifesaver. And, you know, we'll obviously give you that increased damage because you're going to be getting increased uptime for 25 seconds, and then Zealot's Paragon being able to do everything else to keep it up longer means the extra 5 seconds that you get is then going to increase the amount of time that you can permanently keep it up, meaning that you can probably keep it up to 100%. And Sanctified Wrath, we've never been able to take this before because we've always had to take, I'll go over to the other side, Righteous Protector, which was on the same talent tree currently, however has now been split off, so now being able to take both means that our wings are going to be incredibly powerful. And obviously Righteous Protector over here, which we will go into and I will talk about once we get there as well, but I'm just talking about it now because this is the talent tree that we've gotten to. Righteous Protector, reducing the cooldown for each holy power spent, reducing the cooldown of your Avenging Wrath by 0.5 seconds. So every time that you use Shield of the Righteousness, you reduce the cooldown by 1.5 seconds, which does go up to 1 second, so it actually goes up to 3 seconds in the end, which is really good. Sanctified Wrath means that you're going to be getting more holy power, and it's obviously the longer wings with Zealot's Paragon, which is an even longer wings, and then during that you're also reducing the cooldown of your wings again, using Righteous Protector, which means that I'm pretty certain you can keep up 100% uptime, and this is mostly just for a few different reasons. It's because we can take Sanctified Wrath, Zealot's Paragon now works off Judgments and Hammer of Wrath, and then Righteous Protector is on a separate tree. Oh, God. Last choice, this can be utility if you feel like you need utility. It can be healing if you feel like you need healing. You know, like, you have so many different options. You can realistically go for this if you want more damage, 1 point into that, which just means your Hammer of Righteousness gives you 1% increased primary stats for 6 seconds. Basically, you're going to be keeping up with this, you'll be keeping up around-ish, maybe 1.5% increased primary stat, which is okay. I mean, I'll take 1.5% increased primary stat for like one, like, you know, point, so not bad, not bad. You could hypothetically go 2 points into it, but you'd have to remove either haste or mastery, which we're not going to do. We're not doing that. We ain't doing that. Right, okay, so that's fun. That's the main tree. So obviously the main tree for Paladins is a lot stronger than Monks, mainly just because the choices at the bottom are a million times better than for Monk, and it definitely curbs your build more than the actual protection Paladin tree does itself. So it's really interesting to see the baseline tree being that strong. Going into the main tree though, I feel like this is going to be so obvious what we're taking so far. Okay, you know what, I'll talk about that in a sec. So obviously, main two options, not taking Blessed Hammer because it's almost definitely not going to be the right choice. And then we can either choose Inner Light, which is when Shield of Righteousness expires, give 10% block chance, and deal damage to all attackers for 4 seconds. Because of the build we're going to try and keep it up as much as we possibly can with wings, we're not going to worry about that, and instead we're going to go for Redoubt, which is going to increase our strength and stamina by 6% practically, because we will keep it up as much as we possibly can at 6% stacks. Next, Holy Shield, also incredibly powerful. 20% block? 20% block? And don't even worry about the damage. 20% block is unbelievable for 1 point. Then Grand Crusader, which is when you avoid a melee attack or use Hammer of the Righteousness, you have a 15% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Avenger's Shield, which with Inspiring Vanguard, like it's increased to 20% and it grants you 2 strength, which is really, really good. This is mainly because Avenger's Shield is going to be a big form of your damage, which I'll talk about in a bit. So the changes mainly to Prop Paladin that we've seen is a massive focus on Avenger's Shield, and basically Avenger's Shield being the entirety part, like biggest part of your kit. This will still, like, even though it's not giving you holy power, you're still going to have to use this as much as you can during your wings, because it is going to be dealing a huge amount of damage, and I will talk about how much damage it's going to be dealing in a second. Avenger Shield, obvious option. Not Avenger Shield, what am I talking about? Ardent Defender, sorry. Obvious option, it's just the most standard defensive that you need to keep. And this is where you have a couple different choices, actually. So we will likely be going down the sort of center part of the tree now. Maybe dishing a bit to the right, or maybe a tiny bit to the left, but generally speaking, we're going to be sticking towards the center part. You could go for, when you use Avenger Shield, your block is increased by 10% for 10 seconds, because that is basically a 10% block increase, because you're always going to keep that up, which is good. It's a decent option. You could go for the reducing the, your consecration's larger and it slows enemies, which is good if you need a slow during the fight, but isn't always going to be the best option. And obviously, your every 3 Shield of Righteousness makes your next Word of Glory free, which is good. Shining Light's actually a good one. I do like Shining Light as a talent. It means that you always have an emergency Word of Glory practically, rather than having to rely on having the holy power. It's a decent option, but we're going to go for the Barricade of Faith for 10% increased block, because obviously this 10% plus the 20% from here, plus your mastery, plus your actual block, you'll be keeping up a very high amount of block right now, so yeah, that's really good. Next one is Armed Defender reduces all damage taken by an additional 10% on top of the already 20%, which means that we're now getting 30% reduced damage from Armed Defender, which is huge. This is a massive increase from Shadowlands, which makes Armed Defender a legitimately good defensive now. Like before, it was kind of like, because you were able to keep it up for a long amount of time, that was basically the main point, is that it was a small defensive, but since you kept it up for ages, it did a lot of value. But that's really good. This is a really good change. Bulwark of Order, Avenger Shield, also shields you for 50% of the damage it deals, up to 100% if you put both points into it. Now, this is obviously incredibly powerful in AoE. In single target, it's not great. It's okay. Slightly consistent tankiness. We will put points into it. But now we want to talk about my favorite choice node across any of the talent trees, and my favorite ability in the game that has been brought in, which is Sentinel. Sentinel is a new defensive for Paladins. I don't know if it was a thing before, but it's definitely a thing now. And it is by far the coolest defensive I've ever seen, and is the best ability I've ever seen. Like, it's so cool. So it's call upon the light and gain 15 stacks of Divine Resolve, which increase your health and reduce your damage taken by 2% per stack. So you get 30% increased maximum health and 30% DR, which is insane. That's a massive defensive, you know. That's like, that is the biggest defensive you would have as a Paladin. And this lasts for 20 seconds. So it's that is a maximum of 20 seconds. After 5 seconds, you'll begin to lose 1 stack per second, but each 3 holy power spent will delay the loss of your next stack by 1 second. So you can extend how long you have this for, up to 20 seconds. With the build that I've got here, with the Sanctified Wrath build, the really high holy power generation build, you could make this last the full 20 seconds. I'm very confident you can make this last the full 20 seconds, honestly. So, you know, 20 seconds of 30% reduced damage and 30% max health increase, that's huge. And it's the coolest ability. And it's so nice because it's a defensive where you then have to start, you know, spamming to try and keeping up this defensive. It's kind of like Armed Defender, with the extension that you were able to do during Shadowlands. However, the big difference is it's just so much stronger, and it's so much of a better ability. It's only on a 2-minute cooldown as well, so you can use relatively often. incredibly strong, incredibly cool. It looks so good, but it's on a choice node with Avenging Wrath Might, which busts your Avenging Wrath by giving you increased 20% critical chance. That's why this sucks, and this is like the worst choice node. It's like the best and the worst choice node. It's like, it's so good because the options are incredible and it has Sentinel, which is the best ability ever, but you've got to make a choice between them, which is why it's like so frustrating. So to give you an idea, since this entire build is about keeping up your wings 100% of the time, 20%, 20% increased crit, basically permanently, that's probably better than Sentinel. Permanent 20% crit, massive, especially since it's like you've got wings and everything, and you're going to be throwing out these massive judgments, Avenger shields, and Hammer of Wraths. The 20% crit is just too good. It really is, and that's why it sucks so much, because I really want to take Sentinel because it is the coolest thing ever. But Avenging Wrath Might is just so much better. So the problem that I've got is you're going to have to choose them. But I think looking at it and thinking about it a lot, Avenging Wrath Might is the better option. But if you really need defensive capabilities, which I'm not sure you honestly will by looking at this, like the build that I'm making, just purely looking at it from a value perspective, getting the 20% crit permanently basically is just too strong. Like you can't do without it, So I'm gonna go ahead and have to take it. I'm not happy about it, but I'm gonna have to take it. If it's a fight, like I said, where you need more defensiveness, Sentinel is 100% the better option, but this is just too good. Like, this is just too strong to not take. So that choice node really does make the build super powerful. 20% increased crit permanently is going to be insane. Guardian of Ancient Kings, 5-minute cooldown, reduces your damage taken by 50% for 8 seconds. Pretty standard, and obviously you're going to be reducing the cooldown of that with Righteous Protector. Relentless Inquisitor, spending Holy Power grants you 1% haste for 12 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So basically 3% haste permanently. We take it. Avenger Shield imbued with Holy Power, causing it to do a little bit of AoE damage to all enemies that get hit nearby. Awful for single target, useless. Never put a point to it for single target. For AoE, that obviously, the Mythic Plus build, that will become a thing though. Your next 3 casts of Shield of Righteousness, all Blood of Glory, cost no Holy Power on a 2-minute cooldown. It's okay, I guess. We're going to have to take it because we are going to want to go down here in a second. But it's just not great, is it? Like, the only time I can ever see someone using Bastion of Light, the only time ever I can imagine someone using Bastion of Light, is specifically the circumstance where you've lost wings for maybe 15 seconds. Like, whatever, you lose wings and you've not got any holy power and you're struggling to stay alive, so you just pop Bastion of Light during that time to keep yourself going. That's the only time I can imagine really using it. Otherwise, I just wouldn't really pop it. Like, maybe I'll just pop it for the extra damage from using 3 free casts of Shield of Righteousness, but that's it, Like, otherwise it's just not good. But anyway, now to go to the right-hand side, we're obviously going to have to put points into the Light of the Titans, which is Word of Glory, heals for, it gives you a hot, basically, cast on yourself. Okay, so it's increased if cast on yourself while you're affected by a harmful periodic effect. So if you have a dot on you, it's better, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's decent, I guess. It's something. Like, I'll take it. Whatever. It doesn't look like it's going to be great or that good, but it's something. Whatever. And I need to take it to get to the other stuff. Hand of Protector, unbelievable choice. Hand of Protector's always been a big favourite of mine. Hand of Protector is incredibly powerful because the amount of healing that you give, and especially in dungeons, this is huge. And in raids, now this is also going to be really nice. I've always kind of wanted to take it in raids. However, you've never been able to mark it with Judgment of Light as well. Because they were on the same talent tree, so being able to take both is incredibly powerful. Now for one of the most amazing talents. Judgment now has 2 charges, and Grand Crusader, which is the choice up here, also grants a charge of Judgment. So obviously 2 charges is huge, because now we have Zealot's Paragon affecting Judgment, so that's going to blow it out the window, give you so much more time on wings. Plus, use it like Grand Crusader, which is this one, has a chance of giving you another like a bit of Judgment. So now Grand Crusader is 20% like chance of happening, gives you 2 strength for 8 seconds, and then gives you another Judgment as well. So keeping up wings is even easier. Like, keeping up wings just got better, literally. It's incredibly powerful. Really, 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 really good. I'm really happy with that. Next choice. So, I mean, there's not really too much like around here that we would really want. Strength of Conviction is okay. While in your consecration, your Shield of the Righteousness and Word of Glory have 10% increased effectiveness. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I put 1 point into it. It's like that's the thought process, really, isn't it? It's like, I guess I'll just put 1 point into it because I need to get to the next row, and it's not bad. Like, it's an okay talent. I've had a lot of these talents are actually like average or above average, which is really nice. But yeah, put 1 point to that. Then we go down. Righteous Protector, obviously a must-have talent. A absolutely must-use without a shadow of a doubt talent. But this is where we're going to now get into the worst part of the Paladin, prop Paladin talent tree. These options at the bottom are dreadful for single target. Are so bad for single target. Like, they're useless. They're absolutely useless. So you might find that we might not take a lot of these keystones in the grand scheme of things. We just might not. But either way. So next choice is you either have Focused Enmity. There we go. Avenger's Shield deals 200% increased damage but only strikes 1 target, or Avenger's Shield jumps to more targets. Obviously, a very obvious choice between AoE and single target, but 200% increased damage when it hits only 1 target. 200%! That's insane! That's nuts. Like, that's like huge amounts of damage. Like, Avenger's Shield does a good amount of damage. Like, it actually does an okay amount of damage. This is huge. This is actually insane. Like, it's something else. It's absolutely something else. Yeah, nothing else really needs to be said there. And then obviously the next option is Avenged Shield deals 50% increased damage to its primary target, which basically means it's another 30% increased damage on top of the 200% increased damage, which is massive. And then we're going to go Moment of Glory, because obviously not a very free option for us to go to. Then we'll talk about that, which is for the next 15 seconds, you generate an absorb for 20% of all the damage that you deal. Avenger's Shield cooldown is... Avenger's Shield damage is increased by 20% and its cooldown is reduced by 75, meaning that you're going to be able to basically spam Avenger's Shield, get a really big absorb for it, and you get increased damage on top of the increased damage here. Really good. Really, really good. Basically what it means is that when you pop Moment of Glory, you're going to be just sitting there throwing Avenger Shields constantly and getting these huge absorbs, because obviously Bulwark of Order, which I did mention that I'll come back to later, gives you the shield for 100% of the damage dealt with Avenger Shield. So really, during Moment of Glory, you're going to be able to just sit there and spam out these Avenger Shields with the 20% increased crit, with the increased damage from Avenging Wrath. Like, you have a lot of reasons to use it. The only downside is you're going to have a lot of GCDs to have to press, but you're not going to be able to press all of them. I'll give you a good example. During Wings, you want to use you want to use Hammer of Wrath perfectly. You want to use Judgment perfectly, and you want to also use your Avenger Shields as much as you can. So you're going to run into a serious issue where you're only going to be able to use those 3 specific abilities that are on the GCD. And Moment of Glory reducing the cooldown by 75% means you're going to not have enough GCDs. You're already probably going to struggle a little bit for GCDs, having to press all these buttons, but this is just going to make it a lot worse. I would go ahead and say Moment of Glory is good to use, especially during Wings, because obviously the increased damage, but when you've completely... So a good option would be use 2 Judgments, use the Hammer of Wrath, then pop Moment of Glory, because then you're going to have as much like downtime, I guess you can say, on your other abilities, that you can gain as much value as you can from Moment of Glory. So it's going to be a bit difficult to use, but it's definitely going to give you a huge amount of value. I'll still obviously recommend using it 100%. Eye of Care is a very good option to take in the scenario that you need a bit of extra defensiveness. You know, AoE, basically it's a 25% DR for 9 seconds. That's all it really is, on a 1-minute cooldown, which is really good. And what I'm noticing here is that they're definitely giving a lot more they're definitely giving a lot more defensives to Prop Paladin. I found Prop Paladin in Shadowlands as well. You had 2 defensives. You had Guardian of Ancient Kings and you had Ardent Defender, and that was it. Now they're giving you a lot more defensive options. You know, we have Sentinel as a defensive option. We have Eye of Kyr as a defensive option. Even if you go down to these kind of sides, your Seal of Order even gives you some more defensiveness. So we're definitely becoming a tankier spec, especially with the increased blocks here and here. Like, you know, you're becoming a tankier spec, really. But losing Shield of Righteousness means that your consistent tankiness isn't great, which is why this build, in my opinion, is so incredibly strong, because you've got Sanctified Wrath. Oh, that's a Steel Series notification in the middle of a video. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so you got Sanctified Wrath, which means that your like Shield of Righteousness uptime is still going to probably be around 100%, plus all these extra defensiveness things. You're going to be a very tanky spec, a very, very tanky spec. So it's looking good, and with this build, you could get a huge amount of damage with 100% wings uptime. I don't know, I would really have to play this spec a lot more to sort of figure things out, but as it currently stands, I do think that it could be incredibly powerful. I'll quickly finish off the tree, just so I can get it all sorted. There's not too many incredible options here. Shield of the Righteous grants 10% increased armor, obvious option. Bulwark of Righteous Fury, which is Avengers Shield, causes the damage of next Shield of Righteousness to increase. Not great. It's really not giving you much benefit at all, I'm not going to lie. But you may as well take it, because it's still one of the better choices you can make. And then Divine Toll, because why not? You know? Because why not? Yeah, that's the single target tree. That's probably just about as good as it's going to get. Like I said before, the whole point is keeping up wings. You're going to have huge damage because of keeping up wings, plus all these other things, and obviously Paladin is looking a lot more tankier. Overall, I think that Paladin in this sort of single target raid environment could be an absolute monster. It could be insanely powerful, but we're going to have to see how things pan out. We're going to see what kind of changes that they're going to make, and also how good the other tanking specs are going to be, because currently a lot of the tanking specs are looking pretty goddamn strong, but this is my personal thoughts. I think Paladin is going to be one of the for sure better options going into Dragonflight. But anyway, you know, we're already 40 minutes into the video, but it's fine. Without further ado, let's go on to the Mythic Plus talents. And I'm back. Sorry about that, I had to take a break for a quick second, but I'm back here to talk about now the M Plus talents. So M Plus, obviously, like I mentioned yesterday in the Brewmaster trees, it's more important in M Plus to have utility and survivability than damage, because most of the damage will be coming from your party anyway. Granted, we're not going to shy away from damage at all, but you'll notice that this build is going to be similar, but definitely much more focused on surviving. And also potentially more healing than doing damage. First of all, Blessing of Freedom is actually a must at this time. Blessing of Freedom in, I would say, about 60% of dungeons has a good use, so I am going to put it there because it is incredibly useful. It's very, very good. And then obviously, Blinding Light, also a must-have. Cleanse Toxins, also probably a must-have in dungeons. Like, you know, we're noticing a lot more utility coming around this time. But generally speaking, it's going to be somewhat similar. But yeah, pretty fun stuff. We're not going to take any of the extra horse stuff, because I don't think we're going to necessarily need loads of movement in dungeons. If it's a dungeon where you need a lot more movement, you could put a point into the Divine Steeds, and maybe we will later, who knows. But yeah, that's generally the consensus of it. We're getting a lot more utility from Cleanse Toxins, Blessing of Freedom, and Blinding of Light. And obviously, we're not going into Ret Aura just because we're going to be going Devotion Aura almost 100% of the time anyway, because we will have a Holy Paladin with us. Armor and crit chance increase, yep, good. Blessing of Sacrifice, yep, fantastic. Unbreakable Spirit, Avenging Wrath, also things you're going to take. Blessing of Freedom is also something that you want to take. Rebuke, obviously, something you really need to take, really. Now, Judgment of Light, obviously we don't want to take this time, actually. Judgment of Light is not going to be good at all in these dungeons, so that's not worth taking. You could take Golden Path. It's a decent one. It basically just means that you can heal your party a lot more and help out with healing. After Image, also a very good option. And actually, you know what? I'll put a point into After Image just because I kind of like even out the points a lot more. And I'll go for Incan once again. Just bit of extra damage here and there. You know how it is. We will go for the reduced cooldown on Blessing of Sacrifice. Recompense is it's not great because it's, I mean, the Word of Glory would be okay, but it means that you have to hold out on using Judgment to save it for the Word of Glory when it does pop, which isn't ideal. You want to use Judgments when you need to use Judgments. And obviously single target damage isn't really that important. So we're going to go for the reduced cooldown. So we have a 1 minute Blessing of Sacrifice, which is incredibly strong, especially in these dungeons. You know, you could pop it on people like just save their defensives. So that's really good. Generally speaking, it's going to be very similar stuff. Turn Evil, if you don't have someone that can hard CC things, Turn Evil is an option, or you can go Repentance, is also another option. Granted, if that's what it works, if it works against the right mobs, you need to CC. But I'm going to go both points into my Holy Power spending abilities being increased and a bit stronger. Next up, we're going to be going down a few different parts of the tree. So first of all, concentration damage is increased by 10%. Yep, useful. Speed and avoidance. So I remember touching on my avoidance in the last video that I made about monks and their avoidance part. The avoidance was AoE avoidance, and that's why it was super, super strong. 2% speed and avoidance is fucking ass. Like 2% avoidance already on a tank just isn't really much of an increase. It's mainly the other people in your group that need avoidance, not you, because the AoE damage doesn't matter to you, really. The chance of the target, your attacks have a chance to make the target take 5% increased damage, 10%, yep, cool. Zealot's Paragon as well. So Zealot's Paragon, strictly just so you can keep up wings more, so you can take more, like, you know, bigger, longer packs better. Again, we're going for a very similar-esque build in terms of how we're going to be keeping stuff up. And then here, we're going to go Divine Purpose into both of these, once more into Sanctified Wrath. Now we have one more point that we can spend things. Obviously, could go into Golden Path. Could go into one of these speed upgrades if you really wanted to. Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of different options that you could go for here. But generally speaking, I'm probably just going to put it into Golden Path. Like I said though, if you want the extra speed, absolutely go for it. There's a bunch of different options. If you feel like you want, like, Blessing of Protection cooldown reduced by 60 seconds, or Spell Warding, you can go for that too. Quite flexible in that last point, especially. Now going in, so that's builds very similar. This is a very, 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 very similar build to the single target one, but this is where things are now going to start changing. Obviously, I don't actually know which out of these two will be the best option, but I'm going to still click Hammer of Righteousness. Granted, it could be Blessed Hammer in AoE, maybe, depending on how strong they make it, but I doubt it will be, I really do. Now, next one is Readout. I mean, 6% stamina and 6% strength, because granted, again, we don't want to lose Shield of the Righteousness at all. Under any circumstance, we don't want to lose Shield of the Righteousness. Yes, Holy Shield. Again, same reasoning. Grand Crusader, same reasoning. All of these, all the same reasoning, especially because Adventure Shield are going to be using a lot more, which means that Bulwark of Order, this is the incredibly strong part about AoE, especially M+ Pro Paladin, is Avenger Shield giving you the 100% absorb when it's going to be dealing so massive amounts of damage. Okay, like, this could be insane. Depending on what it's like, it could be insane. Tier Enforcer, obviously Avenger Shield is imbued with, like, Holy Fire, basically just meaning Avenger Shield is a small burst of damage around it. It's a very, very small amount of damage, but in these AoE scenarios, you're going to be hitting loads of enemies with it. This is going to be super, super valuable. You know, in small targets, this isn't great, but the more targets that you add, you know, this is just going to become so insanely strong, because it scales pretty infinitely, really. Oh, Jesus, that's a phone alarm. Almost forgot to turn that one off, but that's fine. Yeah, standard stuff. Resolute Defender. Each 3 Holy Power you spend reduces the cooldown on Undefender and Divine Shield by 1 second. Now this was an option that we could have gone for with my single target build, but the only problem is that you have to go down like an extra 2 points to get to it, which just kind of takes away the value. It's a really good talent, but only if you're able to get to it. You know, don't force trying to get to this talent. Even though it is a very good one, because it just means that Ardent Defender is going to be up a lot more, similar to how it is in Shadowlands. Now, obviously improved Ardent Defender to get the decreased damage taken, and now we're going to actually go into Sentinel this time. Yeah, so the 20% crit isn't worth it anymore versus Sentinel, because Sentinel is obviously giving you such huge defensive power, and plus you really need that defensive power, so you will go Sentinel now, which is really fun actually. I really do like that. Relentless Inquisitor, obviously, just for the increased haste. Guardian Dimension Kings, again a really obvious one. and then 2 points into Light of the Titans, just so he can go down into Hand of Protector. Again, fantastic option. Now, I'll do the rest of these before I start picking up more of the choices up here. Actually, I will put quickly Crusader's Judgment. I almost forgot about that one. We will now go into the rest of this. Righteous Protector, again, great one. Eye of Tyr, again, great one. Bulwark of Righteous Fury, again, fantastic. Soaring Shield for the extra targets hit. Another huge one, you know, getting extra targets hit by it, really, really good. Now, Divine Toll, obviously, is going to be massive. Divine Toll is quite a huge one, really. So obviously it casts your Avenger's Shield on 5 targets nearby, which is then going to jump to, I mean, each jumps to 2 additional enemies, then 2 more, so they're all going to jump to 5 enemies each, dealing a huge amount of damage, giving a huge shield, all of them doing Tier Enforcer, all of them getting so much of a benefit. Avenger's Shield dealing more increased damage to its primary target isn't nearly as useful in this scenario because you don't have the Focused Enmity, which means that Moment of Glory, in my opinion, Moment of Glory is not even close to being nearly as beneficial, just because I don't know, you could go into it. Here's the thing which I struggle on. You could go into for like Moment of Glory, but it just might not be the best choice. You know, you could go into Divine Renaissance. Like, there's a bunch of options that you can go for. I just don't think Moment of Glory is necessarily going to be the absolute best. I mean, you know what? It's 50-50, really. It's an absolute 50-50. I am going to go into it. Sole reason being, if it works with Divine Toll, if the extra damage works with Divine Toll that you get, it's probably worth it, because then you get this disgusting burst. If it's not, though, maybe it's not worth it. Who knows, really? But actually, I'm going to change one thing around. I'm going to get rid of this point on Relentless Inquisitor, and I'm going to pop that into Divine Resonance. And I think this is better, actually. If you go this build where you want to go Moment of Glory, I guess you do take the point out of Relentless Inquisitor, which basically means you're losing 3% haste, but that's kind of fine. You can kind of get away with that because you're going to be gaining, you know, a ton more Avenger Shields, Moment of Glory and everything. So yeah, overall, I've gone through this one really, really quick, but the sole reason I've gone through it so quick is because I've already explained so many of the options in the single target build that I really don't feel like I need to explain them too much in the AoE build. But let's talk about the AoE build, and let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses. So obviously you're going a very similar build to the Sanctified Wrath, a huge wings uptime build. I think it's best. I think that's just the only way to play it right now to keep up Shield of the Righteousness and stuff. God, I'm dying. Obviously got a lot more utility, a lot more CC, a lot more things like that in this build. But this build is a lot more focused now on Avenger's Shield rather than just keeping up wings. So your Avenger's Shield is going to give you a huge amount of survivability, because not only is this thing going to be doing a ton of damage, but also it's giving you a shield for 100% of the damage that it deals. So you're actually, we do kind of have this right now. We do actually have the shield from Avenger's Shields in talent trees, but it's nowhere near as strong. And also Avenger's Shield is also nowhere near as strong. So with all these different things, I do think that you're going to be relatively, you're going to be extremely goddamn tanky with this build. I think, at least in my opinion, and you've still got some good ways of healing your allies and keeping your allies alive. So, you know, you have a lot of stuff going for you. I do think that Prop Paladin is definitely going to be one of the stronger options. But again, all these tanking specs right now just look so good, really. So, I mean, we'll see how it is. I do think this is going to be definitely a top 3 tanking spec. In its current state, if it doesn't get changed, this is a top 3 tanking spec, easily. Just because you're able to keep up so many, not only defensive things, but also offensive things as well. That you can dish out huge amounts of damage while keeping yourself alive, and that's exactly what you really want from a tank at the end of the day, isn't it? And with giving yourself so much utility with Devo Aura, Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Protection, Blessing of Sacrifice, Cleanse Toxins, you know, Blinding Light. Like, there is no other tank that has this much utility, really. There is no tank. So being able to do that, plus interrupting loads with your Avenger shields, plus dealing huge damage, plus surviving, I do think that this could be definitely a top 3, if not top 2 tanking spec, really. It has really fantastic potential. We'll just see how it goes, I suppose, and I will copy this link so I can put this into this description for you guys. There we go. But yeah, I think that's just about it. Again, I'm going to be streaming very shortly after this video goes up, so if you do have any questions, feel free to drop into the stream, or just leave them in the comments. I'll get to them either way. I do think so far both the tank trees that I've gone over are looking pretty goddamn strong. I don't think I'm going to go over too many more of the other talent trees, mainly just because Monk and Paladin are my bread and butter. These are the 2 specs that I really feel confident in. I think the only one I'll go over more actually is the Vengeance Demon Hunter, because also I'm very confident in that as well. So I will go over the Vengeance Demon Hunter, but I don't think I'm going to be going over Prot Warrior, Blood DK, or what's the last one? Who's the last tanking spec? Have I forgotten it? Guardian Druid, yeah, no one plays Guardian Druid. I will go over all. I won't go over all of those. Sorry, but just because I'm not good enough to be able to tell you guys what's strong. Maybe, just maybe, I'll bring on some guests onto the stream or into a YouTube video where I can go over and talk to them about the talent trees, and they can let me know what they think, and I'll put it into a YouTube video. If that's something that you guys would be interested in, let me know. But for the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you later.